Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to call to order the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners for the work session for April the 7th, 2014. For those of you in the audience, I would ask that you put your mobile devices on silent or vibrate, and so it doesn't go off during the meeting. I appreciate that. Commissioners, what you have before you is the work session agenda. It's our first item. And also to point out on 4.8, we do need to suspend the rules for that and make a motion to approve 4.8 tonight because the timing of it, it's between now and our next meeting. Otherwise, you have the changes already in the agenda. So may I have a motion to approve the work session agenda, including the changes? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The first section we have is discussion items with no action. Lynn Whitkey, there you are, here with Cabarrus County Schools to give us update on the QSCB projects. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I'm happy to say that we have a lot of zeros showing up on this particular report, and we're in time per the QSCB requirements to have finished the project. So our work is now done, except for I think a minor $3.19 item, but that's to be resolved as I was just speaking with Mrs. Farrington. But for all intents and purposes, we certainly appreciate the county board's of commissioners' support in approving the bond for this this money, and frankly, in our opinion, it was very timely and took care of an enormous amount of needs, some larger than others, but many schools were benefited by these projects, and really it was something that the projects were things that were really necessary and made a tremendous improvement, either in the environment of the schools or in terms of their ability to provide better teaching spaces for the students. So all in all, I think it was a very successful program for us, and we appreciate your support.
Okay. I want to make sure if your microphone's on. I don't know. Sometimes they control it behind there, and sometimes they don't. Commissioners, anybody have questions on these? The item he's referring to is 4.8,
I'm sorry, yes.
which you should be aware of, and we'll take care of that in just a little bit. So, anybody have any questions?
Just one question. I know we've talked about J.N. Free's roof a couple times, and you did that in a couple different phases. Is that completely replaced, or do you still have some more issues to address there?
To my knowledge,
like somebody mentioned to me there was another building on the property, or not. That's why I'm asking.
No, sir. There is, as far as I know, there's only one main building. We have some outbuildings that are part of the recreational facilities there. They might have been referring to those buildings. I'm not sure. We don't routinely use those ourselves. They're used by the community.
Right.
But the main school, now to my knowledge, is fully. I will say all the flat surfaces are fully replaced. There are some sloped areas that eventually may need replacement, but they're a metal panel, and so they have a long time to go, I think, before that happens. So.
Great. And this may not relate to this particular item, but I know you a month or so ago you were here about a roof at Royal Oaks Elementary. That funding was in place for that to be replaced, and you went ahead getting that lined up.
Yes, sir.
Do you currently have any funding available to address any other roof needs at any of the other schools? Or is there anything on the schedule, or are you waiting for funding on those? And I was particularly surprised when I rode by Northwest Middle School and just visually looked at the roof a few weeks ago.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, we have a little bit of money for emergency patching, but that's really all that we have in place. We're hopeful that the new budget will see some of those projects approved for us. Northwest Middle School was our #1 request last year. Unfortunately, it was not approved because it's a sizable cost to replace that roof, but it's in tremendous need. It leaks literally every time it rains, whether it's hard like today or even just minor rains. They will get water inside the building. And it's just an unfortunate situation where there's movement in the subsurface materials, and a significant amount of uplift on the shingles that allow the moisture to get inside. So it's a major problem, and we just don't have the funding to address those kinds of problems because of their scale or size.
So I'm assuming that we're incurring some additional damage to those structures with this leakage that we're going to have to, if we let it go, we're going to have to address that as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Commissioner, we replace, I don't know how many hundreds of ceiling tiles in that school every year. I mean, just simply because the existing ones get wet and they start to deteriorate to the point of being dangerous, so we have to remove them and replace them. And that's an ongoing battle. When we know it's raining like this and we sort of know areas that are the worst, we literally ask the custodians or our own maintenance staff to move the tiles aside, let the water come down into buckets, and then we put the tiles back in after it stops raining, and we go about trying to patch as best we can.
Right. Is that occurring in student classrooms?
It does. It pretty much occurs throughout the building.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
How old is that building?
Trying to remember. It was a 70s building. I don't remember the exact date.
How many years has the roof been leaking? It didn't just start last month, did it?
No, it's been leaking for several years. I know it's been on our list to replace for 3 years since I've been in this position. I've had it at the top of our list, and I know it was on lists before that. I don't know for how long we've been asking. But.
So maintenance has been let go on these buildings for quite a few years, hasn't it?
You know, and I will say, in reality, we have major needs in maintenance, and if you fix the roof at Northwest, and I hope you have the funding to do that for us, I am certain that we have other leaking roofs in the county.
What's going to be the cost on that roof, you know?
It's about a $1.2 or $1.3 million roof replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
This is probably a question that is more directed to Pam or Mike. How much do we give the school system annually total for maintenance and grounds?
Ms. Wilson has the budget right over there. They have building and grounds maintenance that's reoccurring funding, and then we give them $1,020,000 in capital.
The 1 million's a year,
Yes.
annual.
$1,020,000.
Okay. And reoccurring, please explain that.
It's ongoing money that they have every single year.
Okay.
They can reallocate to different projects.
Well, Pam, what was the account? A few months ago, you showed me the school board had $6 million in some kind of an account.
Their fund balance.
Their fund balance for $6 million.
I think it was the financial report that I gave you, their balance sheet.
So they're sitting on $6 million and letting the roofs leak.
Commissioner Meisner, I have the numbers for you here.
Okay.
For Cabarrus County Schools, building maintenance is $5,969,705. For ground maintenance is $1,299,598. That's for county schools. For Kannapolis City Schools, building maintenance $879,319. Ground maintenance $238,864.
Okay. Now, is that money spent every year? The total amount, has it been spent every year, or do we have money left over?
It's not been spent every year, and they reappropriate money.
Okay. How much is being reappropriated each year generally?
I'd have to go back and pull the building and grounds reports.
Okay. So we do have the funds available, they're just not being spent.
I would say that the majority of the figures that were just given to you, now, do those include, Mike, if I could ask, do those include the capital project fundings?
Yeah, that's separate.
That's separate,
That was
okay.
that we just started last year when we created your technology fund, but it was $1,020,000, I
Right,
believe.
right.
$1,020,000.
From time to time, those projects will be moved from one year to the next. I will tell you, we have very little money left of the amounts that were just read to you each year. Those project funds, I mean, we do keep a certain amount of money in place to be able to do things from the end of, I'll say, the middle of June into mid-July, where it takes time for the accounting to catch up with the new year and all. We have funds in place so we can do things like gym floor renovation and cleaning and rewaxing, and also refinishing rather, and also the same thing is true for cleaning of the schools. We purchase all those materials in this year, but we have funds to also keep going into the summer months for cleaning products and things like that. So there are there's a, you know, I'll say a dedicated amount of money each year that we want to hold in advance to pay for those sorts of activities. But the majority of true maintenance and grounds funds that are not assigned to projects but assigned to maintenance of the buildings is spent.
Okay, so the money that's assigned to the projects, it's spent each year?
Not every year, no. It depends on, the limitation is that we have obviously a limitation of staff time and contractor time in terms of accessibility. We have approximately 2.5 months during the summer when these projects, for the most part, can be done. Physically, there's only so much you can bid and do at the schools at one time. We try and do it a certain amount every year. We've recently filled one of our construction manager positions. We're in the process of hiring a second person. I should say interviewing for that position. Those positions were not filled for the last couple of years. Now that the one is filled, the project movement is occurring on a regular basis and things will improve.
Okay. So it could potentially very well be a situation where there's enough funding, it's just not being able to accomplish the projects in a timely fashion.
I would say, you know, and if you talk about a roof project where it's a major project, if we dedicated a year's amount of funding, in this case, in the case of Northwest Middle, it wouldn't be adequate to do the single roof project that we have to do. That $1.20 million, or $20,000, $1,020,000, represents a large number of projects that go throughout all of the schools. The major capital projects are something that we look to the commissioners and the county to fund for us, in addition to what I would consider almost routine capital projects. They're small in nature, but they are typically done by outside forces. Outside contractors bid that work and do those projects for us.
Okay. And Pam, the money that's reallocated each year, is that reallocated on the county side or the school system side?
Are you referring to the building and grounds
Yeah.
maintenance money? That's current expense money that we give them that they get every year, and
Right.
they use it for salary benefits and then for projects and repair, maintenance, contractual things. And that money comes to them every single year so they can rotate what they use it for, but that's primarily what those funds are for.
Right. Okay, so the money that's not spent is not, you know, we don't have a line in our budget where we're reallocating that money?
No, they have a report that we receive every quarter that
Okay.
tells us what they expend, and then what they don't finish using at the end of the year shows up the next year as being reappropriated. The way the board designated their building and grounds money is that it has to be used for building and grounds and
Correct.
cannot be transferred to another area of the school, so it stays in there and rotates.
Right. Okay. I'd like to see those reports going back 2 years.
Yes, sir.
I had a question about the reserves. We were talking about the amount of reserves they had, and I'm not sure if the right person's here to answer it or not, but does the school board have reserve requirements like we have reserve requirements as to what we're required to keep on hand for cash flow and that sort of thing? Is that same thing true for the school system?
It is, Commissioner Morris. I don't know the percentages as well as perhaps I should, but in fact, very similarly to the county, we are required to hold a certain percentage. It's a recommendation, but it is a strong recommendation that we hold a certain percentage of our operating budget in fund balance every year.
Right.
And it's a rainy day fund, things that can happen. You have to have somewhere to go for funding, and that's simply a requirement for most public bodies.
So if, I'm sure you and I'm looking here at a list of roof projects that's rather lengthy. So I guess if one of those just absolutely, the ceiling fell in, that's where you'd have to go to get the money.
Yes, if there were no other sources, yes, sir. That is correct.
So that money is reserved for really emergency situations. And then if you did dip into that fund to cover those emergency situations, then you would have to answer to local government commission or whomever it is that sets those requirements as to what you should keep in reserves.
Yes, and I would think, and I'm certainly not the expert in this, but I would think that the following year, we'd have to figure out a way to save funds to reimburse that account.
To replenish
To replenish
that
that amount of
reserve
money.
to stay within the guidelines.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions on? So you're going to get a copy of the building and grant, or the maintenance budget reports that you get for all of us. Okay.
Yeah, and do you want the June 30th report? We have it for each quarter, or do you just want it at the end of the fiscal year?
I would like each quarter.
Okay.
And that should show the things that money goes towards, I would presume. I don't know what the categories are offhand.
It lists their salary and benefits, and then it'll list any contractual things that they might have, like exterminators and things like that. And then there'll be 2 lines that are project lines. And then once you get past the summary report, then there'll be a detailed sheet that talks about those projects and what school they're at and the status of where they're at.
Mr. Whitkey, today
Yes,
was
ma'am.
a really big rainy day. You asked and started, I was going to ask, do you have any idea how many calls you got for leaks today?
I don't.
I know of 2, because I had 2 calls, but that's beside the point. But I figured you had more than that.
Normally, if there's sort of a catastrophic leak, we'll get a call the same day as a storm. I would expect the calls to come tomorrow. People come into work, especially the custodians, they're always looking for that first thing in the morning, and that's when we'll get our calls and have to respond. So,
I don't think it's as bad as it was coming down at one point today. I don't think it'll be pretty hard to figure out if there were any leaks. So I just didn't know if you had a report. So
not yet,
okay.
no.
Anything else then?
Well, I just had a question about, I mean, these roofs have leaked for several years, it sounds like, and we've had $15, $20, $30 million fund balance over the last 3 or 4 years. I'm curious as to why these weren't addressed at any time in the past few years.
As I recall, I think, and I'm assuming that you're referring to our unallocated fund balance, our unallocated surplus.
Our surplus, yes.
Right, and I think the discussion had been up until recently, and there are folks in the room that can correct me if I'm wrong, during the economic downturn, those funds were held and not transferred into capital reserve, as we've discussed before. And the plan that had been discussed for quite some time was that those funds would be used to address the construction of the new elementary school on the northwest area of the county in cash, and then the balance of those funds to be allocated to some of these significant maintenance issues that needed to be addressed. And that, for the period of time that I've been on the board, that has been the discussion. That changed a month or so ago when all of those funds were allocated to other specific construction projects, which means we've got to look elsewhere to find the money to fund these maintenance needs and these roof projects and that sort of thing.
Well, there was about $29.5 million in there. They had asked for $21.5 million for the new elementary school. When I came on the board, I think y'all were talking about doing the planetarium for another $250,000, and we were going to loan $3 million to the CVB to build the synthetic turf fields out at Frank List. So that really didn't leave very much for the roofs. And it does just seem like now that we actually have a plan to move forward, now there's a great concern for all these roofs that really hasn't existed for the past few years.
I would beg to differ with that. I think we've had conversations about these roof projects at virtually every work session that we've had since I've been here, and we've talked about a way to address those issues, and I recall there being discussion even prior to my arrival on the board as to how we would do that. I think the discussion about the planetarium, we did not do that, and certainly my justification for not doing that was feedback from the Board of Education, that was not a project that they were requesting. And they felt like that these other priority needs should come before that, and I certainly, after hearing their opinion on it, agreed with them. So, yes, we have been discussing these, and we have been trying to create a plan to address those issues in addition to the additional construction needs that I'm sure we're going to talk about more in the meeting. But it's not a new issue that's come up in the last couple of months by any means.
Okay, anything else for Mr. Whitkey? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, I think it's my fault. I don't know that I communicated perfectly, so that update we will probably put on the next work session in May, that 3.2. And I'm not certain that I explained it well enough that we did the work session versus the regular meeting, and she's probably planning on being here in 2 weeks, so we'll contact her about coming in May. The next item is one that I have that I would like to offer up, and I apologize for us getting it late. I had hoped to get it on last month at our regular meeting in March, and didn't get it, so I couldn't put it on there if I didn't get it. But this week is Advanced Manufacturing Week, and advanced manufacturing is important for North Carolina and important for the United States to bring very good, high-paying jobs back to the area. You have a proclamation in front of you on I have it as page 7. I hope that's where you are. This was provided to me from I can see the lady. I'm sorry. I'm having a brain freeze on names. There's another county just up the road that was doing this, and she was kind enough to send to me what they were approving. So what I would like to do is, because this is Advanced Manufacturing Week, and I'd like to go ahead and approve it for tonight so that we can recognize it for this actual week. And again, it's just a proclamation declaring Advanced Manufacturing Week in Cabarrus County to highlight the importance of advanced manufacturing in our national and local economy, and to draw attention to the many rewarding, high-skilled advanced manufacturing jobs. I won't read all of it, but if there isn't a concern, then I would ask for a motion to suspend the rules so that we could go ahead and move on this proclamation tonight.
So moved.
Okay, have
Second.
a motion, thank you, and a second. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. And may I have a motion to approve the proclamation, please?
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. In my daily job, I spend a lot of time talking about advanced manufacturing. I would like to get from our Chamber of Commerce, and I'll work on that for you, some of the advanced manufacturing businesses that we have in Cabarrus County. There are quite a few. There are a lot of that do assembling, which is not necessarily manufacturing, but I would like to get some information for all of us so that we can better understand what goes on in Cabarrus County. So enough on that one. Ben Rose is here for our monthly update on NC-FAST and Medicaid rollout. Welcome.
Y'all are probably tired of seeing this by now, I'm sure. Thank you for this time on the agenda. We really wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about the Medicaid side of what we're getting ready to face with NC-FAST. But before Trish and Susan get into, Susan stayed in the back. Come on, Susan. This is Susan Barbie, if you don't know her. She's a program manager for Medicaid in Trish's division. I wanted to hit on a couple of global issues for you, just to give you an update on some things that have been obviously going on over the past few months with NC-FAST. The first piece of information I want to share with you is we are current in food and nutrition. The state as well as Cabarrus County, met the USDA guideline that was set forth. It was quite a stressful journey to get there. We actually ended up mandating the Saturday before, the March 31st was the deadline for the USDA for the state to be current on food stamps, both applications and recertifications. So we actually mandated the Saturday before the 31st for the entire division to come work. We had over 80 people there, including myself, and Mr. Downs even came in for a little bit as well, too. We had people there at 5 a.m. They worked past 2 p.m. That was how long 3 p.m. That was how long the system was there, was up. And we got a lot of work done on that Saturday, but we still, and you got to understand when I say the work, what we had was we had two things happening. We had the USDA official pending report that we wanted to make sure we were good on that, but then we were just trying to get current with everything that we had. So we come in Monday with a good amount of work still to do, but we knew we could get it done on Monday. And the system went down at 9 a.m. and stayed down the entire day. They had to actually deploy, they had to call IBM and deploy a fix to the system that night. So they asked the USDA for an extension for 1 day because of those issues there. But we still were able to meet our USDA report that day. And so we were fine as a county, and the state overall was fine. There were, at the end of the time, there were about 380, I believe, that were not timely. And that was down from over 30,000 back in December for the state. So the USDA was fine with that. I don't know if you saw the news, but Guilford County had discovered about over 8,000 applications and recertifications that were not done. So the state had actually deployed a team to Guilford County to help them work on it. They had, of those 380, they had about 200 of those. So it was quite a journey to get there, but we did make it, and we are there now. Are we out of the woods yet in the food and nutrition program? By no means. The USDA is still requiring the state send daily reports to them, and we are current and working hard. Diane and their crew are keen Aprils as they come in terms of recertifications, and we're getting things done as best we can. But we have to sustain this pace, and that will mean continued overtime, continued Saturday work. They worked last Saturday. We have crews there that we're trying to rotate people around, again, not to burn people out, but to sustain this, we have to, that's all we can do for right now is keep going at that pace. But we are current, and we're going to do our best to continue to maintain that. However, if USDA sees that the state is sliding back again, I have no doubt they will drop a deadline back on us. So we're not out of the woods by any means on that. The other item I wanted to share with you, and I do apologize that this was not in your agenda packet, but I did not have access to this letter until late last week. But I thought it would be important to share this letter with you. Yeah, I'll give, Megan, I'll give you one for the record too. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a letter that I'm going to share with you that is from the North Carolina Association of County Directors of Social Services. It was written mid-March to Secretary Wass of DHHS. The purpose and the intent of the letter was to basically express the association's concerns regarding NC-FAST, both issues that we were dealt with food and nutrition, and then issues moving forward in Medicaid. The letter was not made public to even directors as a whole because the purpose of the association was we are still trying to work as partners with the state. However, there were a lot of concerns that have just been put forth by directors regarding communications from the state regarding NC-FAST, issues, problems that we're having, and how we can continue to move forward with NC-FAST and be successful. So this letter was actually hand-delivered to the Secretary because one thing that we were trying to avoid was getting into the media and looking like it's county versus state. That was not the purpose of the Directors Association. But I think this letter is a very critical letter. We have still not received any response from it, but I wanted to highlight just a couple of points from it that I think are important to see. I would definitely recommend reading it as a whole going forward. But on page 1, if you see down towards the bottom, this paragraph is talking about basically, our intent and our goal is to work with the state to have an automated system that streamlines eligibility, makes our job easier, and makes it better. But the very last sentence is the sentence I think that has proven the most effective when it says, "The reality of NC Fast for almost 2 years has proven to be a stark contrast to those promises of being an effective system." The system has just not worked for us, and that is the feeling of every county in this state. It has not been an effective system to this date. We still want it to be, but it has not been. If you go, as you go into the letter on page 2, towards the bottom, they're talking about here the risk finding, the quality standards that are being created in NC Fast and the potential for audits, finding, and paybacks within the system. The system not working effectively basically has put us in a situation where we are at liability for paybacks to the state, especially when it comes to Medicaid, which they will definitely talk about. There has been unprecedented funding put in by counties across the state to help deal with the food and nutrition program. You as a board yourself approved 2 months of temporary work. I saw a figure that I believe across the state there's been over $9 million spent in additional temporary work just to get this, just to help counties stay afloat, basically, is what it's come to. The overtime, that doesn't even include, I don't believe, the overtime that has been expended by counties to do this. Many counties are actually paying overtime now because it's so hard when you're accruing so much overtime and you can't take it, it's almost impossible to do so. On page 3, and of course this is what they're doing is they're outlining, solutions as an association to the state. And at the top of page 3, this is one of the areas of concerns as well too, is just regarding the consistency of communications from the state regarding NC Fast. We feel like there has not been an honest portrayal of the issues that we've dealt with. And quite frankly, sometimes as counties, we have felt thrown under the bus by the state. They even are quoting, I think, Secretary Wass specifically in this letter when they're going out to legislators and to the media and talking about the system is working perfectly. When here we go on March 31st, the system is down for the entire day. It's just not, it's not helping us, it's not helping our partnership. And that's part of what they're talking about there as well. I like the part too as well towards the bottom of page 3 where it starts out the USDA deadline. This is an issue that we've been talking about with you as well. We feel like we have been operating in a crisis mode for the past few months that we just cannot sustain. We cannot continue this track. We are seeing turnover from our staff, and when I say that, I mean not only Cabarrus County but across the state. We've operated in a crisis mode when we probably didn't have to. Information, better sharing of information, better communication could have prevented some of this crisis situation, and that is an area that counties are just really wanting the state to see. On page 4, if you notice as you get down towards the bottom of it, see it's the full paragraphs, it's the third full paragraph. It kind of sums up that crisis mode where it says collectively we can agree that neither DHH staff nor county staff can continue to operate in such a crisis mode each month, and we just cannot do that. Sustainability is impossible at this level right now. Part 4 talks a little bit about some of the technical issues and what I referred to earlier, that the funding that has been expended by counties and trying to just keep things afloat. This state, while it's had its periods of trouble with eligibility overall, and I can assure you this county has always been very efficient in delivering these services in a timely manner as we are required by federal law. And this has just had such an impact to us and again created counties to have to spend overtime and temporary staff. That was not the promise of NC Fast. The promise of NC Fast was we're going to make your jobs easier. You may be able to reduce staff because it's going to streamline eligibility and automate it. Well, that's the promise that has not been realized or been broken. I would refer you back to, before I let these guys talk about the issue that brought us here today, on page 2, the second paragraph, that's kind of what's brought us here today. And it talks about based on the food and nutrition experience that we've had so far, the transition of NC Fast into Medicaid is causing very significant concerns for us in counties. Medicaid Food and nutrition, as we've talked about, is a program that even if we're having troubles and issues and we have backlogs, we can get people food. But it's hard to get people health care if we have a backlog there or we have gaps. And people need health care. This is life-sustaining at times. And this is a big concern. We're already seeing issues with NC Fast and NC Tracks. NC Tracks is the Medicaid program that pays providers. That's the payment system that's set up. There's already been issues where clients have gone to get medical services that are authorized for Medicaid, but because NC Fast has not registered or communicated with NC Tracks, they're not able to get health care services. So we're already seeing impacts from this already, and it's really a big concern going forward. And that's why we really wanted to come here today to talk to you, again, not to be pessimistic. We're all trying to be as optimistic as we can, but the realities that we're facing with Medicaid, I believe, are much more concerning than we ever saw with food and nutrition. Trish and Susan are going to tell you a little bit about, and try to do it in layman's terms, a little bit about what we're facing over the next 3 to 6 months, and hopefully a situation that we won't have to come to you every month like we did with food and nutrition, but honestly, there's a lot of concerns going forward in Medicaid. So I'll let Trish kind of give you some numbers to give you a picture.
Well, so Ben talked to you about the crisis that we faced in food nutrition, and I fully agree and have been saying from the start that Medicaid was going to be a worse situation because families who can't get their medicines or can't get their health care, I can't send them to a food pantry. I can't send them to a storage facility that has meds for them. So, and we can't find a provider who will do a free surgery or, something like that. So, we've been seeing since October, actually Medicaid started rolling out the end of September in Cabarrus County. The rollout, the pilot counties that started, they had already been delaying NC Fast and Medicaid because of issues with NC Fast. They had to get counties on board by October 1 due to the Affordable Care Act. And so that's what we're working under. Medicaid had to roll out when it did because of the Affordable Care Act. So the last week in September, the county rolled out in Medicaid, and since then, we've seen issues with Medicaid. So the end of September, we started taking applications slowly but surely in NC Fast for Medicaid, and then in November, as we were gearing up to start recertifications, the state sent out a letter, which we got on November 20th. It was dated November 15th. So what I'm going to share with you are sort of the communication issues we continue to see. It's communicated to us, but it's always after the fact. Like, things have already been going on for a couple of weeks. So on November 20th, we were told the state had gotten a waiver to Medicaid recertifications, which allowed the state to sort of double up recertifications, which are the Medicaid reviews, and most of them are due, the bulk of our cases are due for review once a year. The family and children-only cases, the ones for the children, are once a year. So those were extended. January, February, and March were each extended 3 months. So instead of being due in January, they were due for review in April. So April, May, and June, we're having double reviews. And you start working your reviews a month ahead, so really we started working them in March. So March for April, and so on, 2 months of reviews. Well, because of the issues that we've been reporting for food nutrition, we had those same issues with Medicaid. It was a struggle to get the cases in. What's happening in Medicaid is that when you put a case into NC Fast, in order for it to approve, the information has to feed from the old state legacy system, which is the old computer system we were using. Not like food and nutrition where they closed everything and we had to put them back in. They sort of converted. Our conversion was enter it from the get-go, which is why we talked about temps and the need for people to build their cases in NC Fast. So we were expecting March 1st to have 2 months worth of reviews to do. Well, on February 20th, they sent us the policy on how to do that, which was supposed to start on March 1st. We were not even able to start keying into the system until March 1st because of state issues. So then in March, we were to have almost 2,700 reviews to do. They noticed as March was going through that the information from these cases was not converting over. So we ended March with about 300 of the cases we put into NCFAST converting over. That left us with like 2,400 cases that did not get done for March. So now, all the issues we had in March, now we're dealing with, April we had 2,200 reviews in April. So we're adding the 2,200 that about didn't get done, that we have to, well, let me step back. Because of all the issues of converting, the state got another waiver, which we were told about on March 21st. They like the 21st, the end of the month. So they said March 21st, all the reviews that you did in March need to go back into the old system because of these issues. So we had all these cases that we were trying to put into NCFAST that weren't taking. And so I think we got about 300 to actually take. Now we're having to pull the ones that were in NCFAST out. Actually, the state closed most of those for us, but we're having to put them back into the old state system. A lot of those cases, because of the timeline, double reviews, and the volume of work, we knew we weren't going to get everything done in March, because it's hard to get a 1 month worth of reviews done. The old state system didn't work properly because of feeding into NCFAST, and obviously NCFAST didn't work. So we were the whole month struggling to get the volume of work done. But now in April, we're looking at about 4,400 reviews that we're trying to get done. And we have deployed the same model that we used for food nutrition. We've got teams. We've got one group of people working March. We've got another group working April. I've got food nutrition workers that are going through training this week so they can start helping Medicaid. We still have to keep our eye on the food stamp cases, but that's why we're working, because we can't meet the volume of work with existing staff at 40 hours a week. You just can't do it. So on top of reviews, which for the next 3 months or more, we're going to be in this continual cycle of trying to get this work done with the state system and making sure that, because our applications are still going to NCFAST and we still have issues with NCFAST. So we also, starting October, the Affordable Care Act started, and that allowed the client, the person, to apply for insurance at the federal level. And if they wanted a subsidy, then they got dropped back down to the state, because you have to be evaluated for Medicaid. The federal policy, and I've shared this with you before, so I don't want to go back through old information, but in order for you to get approved for the subsidy, you have to be denied for Medicaid. The rules at the federal level are those of the expanded Medicaid, which North Carolina did not do. So the rules are telling people who aren't eligible, hey, you might be eligible, and dropping them back down. So we're going to see some denials, obviously, because these families aren't eligible for expanded Medicaid because North Carolina didn't do that. But the income levels they're using at the federal level, I think, are different than what North Carolina has. So we have families who are going to be denied. But we had, as of January 22nd, all the applications that were submitted to the federal marketplace, which we call FFM, the Federal Funded Marketplace, were not released to North Carolina until they started trickling in around January 22nd. So we had 4 months of applications that folks weren't hearing anything, so that created additional calls to us. Where are you at? Well, we haven't gotten it yet. The state deployed a group of what they called on-site support people that they had loaned to the county for troubleshooting NCFAST. They redeployed them back to Raleigh so that they could work on those FFM applications, which are the federal marketplace applications. There were about 73,000 at the time statewide, and the folks who went to Raleigh were looking for duplicate applications and looking for out-of-state applications, and they were registering these applications so that once they got to the county, it would be a little easier. I think we heard they denied about 3,500 of the 73,000, and the rest got sent to the counties to work because they couldn't figure out what was going on with them. So we had to fully work those. We got about 900 sort of trickled in between February 22nd and March 22nd. We're still working those. They are already behind because when they got to us, if they applied in November, well, obviously, we just got them in February. They're not meeting the 45-day processing time which Medicaid requires. So we have well over 900 applications that are over 45 days just because of the marketplace. We have another about 1,500 that were going through the electronic system. So we have about 2,300 applications sitting out there in addition to the 4,400 Medicaid recertifications that we're working. So needless to say, it is a mess that we're trying to struggle through, but we're working the same process, like I said, and I've got Susan here, Diane's here, we're all back in it together. But we wanted you to know because our citizens aren't getting their Medicaid because we haven't got some of their applications. We found some folks applied 4 and 5 times because they didn't hear from us. They were like, okay, I'll do it again, I'll do it again. And sometimes maybe they've had a change in their situation, so they might have applied in October, but then they reapplied in January because now they've gotten a raise or they've gotten, a new baby in the house or whatever. So we're seeing that as well that we're having to weed through. So that's sort of our timeline and where we're at, and just so you know, because those calls may start coming to you like they did for food nutrition. We are really good, and I'm so very proud of my staff for food nutrition, but pardon my French, I told Ben the hell has just started, so sorry. It's true. So we worked 10 hours to get food stamps that Saturday. We all came in at 5, and I'm not an early bird, I promise. But we all got there at 5. We stayed till 3, most of us, and we got it done. And Medicaid's going to be the same.
Well, and another issue too, just that, and Trish can help me guide through it a little bit more, is that one of the waivers, what the waiver is allowing us to do, while it's allowing us to work in the old system, if an application is denied, correct?
yeah.
In the old system, we still have to enter that application into NC Fast and make sure it's not eligible under MAGI, which is, MAGI rules are the new rules with Family and Children's Medicaid that basically it kind of works like your taxes. And it's factored in your deductions and your income, but it's the new set of rules that has come from the Affordable Care Act. And so we have to basically work that application twice. If we deny it in EIS, our old system, if it's denied there, we have to make sure it's not eligible under the rules still with the Affordable Care Act. So we work an application twice. That coupled with the additional delays of the reviews that are being dropped on us, the volume is drowning us. We simply either work our staff to death or we're going to have delays. And I think unfortunately, and this is not unique to Cabarrus, please don't think that. This is statewide. This is an issue statewide, and that's part of what this letter is getting at, is that, we cannot just continue this rate. So we wanted to put this on your radar now to let you know that all we can do is work overtime and work Saturdays and get done as much as we can do. But you see the volume that we have, and that is a volume that is not what we normally have. And then if you had a system that worked great, we might even could handle that volume, but the system itself works when it wants to.
Well, and what I failed to mention as well is that our staff, the new staff we've hired, we did not train in the old state system. It didn't make sense because we're moving to this new program with new rules starting January. So we trained our folks for the new Medicaid policies, which went into effect January 1. Now we're having to retrain all these folks on policy that was in effect, pre-January, because that's where they have to go using the old system. We also have to get them access to the old system, which we did not do. So IT's working double time trying to help us with that. And then, like Ben said, we have to put it in NC Fast anyway, because that's the only way it gets up to the federal marketplace to get their subsidy if they're not eligible for Medicaid. So it is just, and honestly, do I know that it's getting to the marketplace? No. The way the system's working, who knows? It probably isn't, but that's, showing my confidence in NC Fast. But so
bureaucracy
it's just
in action.
Okay, anybody have any additional questions at this time that you want to ask?
I wanted to ask you, I know that the food and nutrition program, it took you a while to input, a client's information. Is it roughly take about the same time per case for Medicaid, or is Medicaid more extensive?
Medicaid's more extensive because it does have more rules.
Right.
You have to verify citizenship. You have additional data points that you have to add for Medicaid that food nutrition did not require. And then you have to be careful that what you put in does not impact the other program, which we saw that as well. It was closing food stamp cases because the worker didn't enter the information correctly, or they didn't realize it was impacting what they had just put in, caused a reduction or a,
Right.
deletion of the food nutrition benefits. So they have to be careful with that as well.
Is it the same staff that's working on the Medicaid cases that was working on the food nutrition?
We had, because of the extension and recertifications, we had deployed some of those Medicaid staff to food nutrition.
Right.
Now we're redeploying them back to Medicaid, and we're training our food nutrition staff for Medicaid. So it will be the same staff in the end because they're all having to learn everything right now.
Okay.
So we're trying to do some quick training and hit the high points so everybody can tackle these 4,000 reviews that we're trying to get done this month.
Okay. And then my last question is, how many Medicaid clients do we have in Cabarrus County?
We have about 29,000 recipients, and of that, about 6,200 are in the adult category. So we're talking about potentially 23,000 that are impacted by this policy right now, because currently adult Medicaid cases are not in NC Fast. They're living in their old system, although they're talking about rolling that program out now in July into NC Fast
Right.
instead of the larger volume of clients.
Correct. Okay, so you're saying about 23,000 are
Are-
children?
Well, our family and children cases.
It could be the adults. Okay.
Yeah, it could be the parent or parents of the children. Pregnant women are in that category as well. The bulk of our cases are children. I didn't bring the stats, but I would estimate about 15 to 17,000 are children under 18 or 19.
Adult Medicaid tends to be seniors, long-term care, and disability.
Right.
That's typically when we say adult. Family and children's can be a parent with 2 children, and their whole family is covered by Medicaid because they meet the eligibility criteria within that. And that's the 23,000. And that's where the MAGI rules are applying.
Okay.
I have one question. I'm curious about, we had talked about, one of the reasons we had talked about the resolution with regard to categorical eligibility was to ease some of the strain on your staff in terms of the number of clients. We talked about that last month, I believe, at our work session, and we talked about it again in the meeting in the box. And I am curious why it's not on our agenda, because I did see that you had sent us a proposed resolution, and I don't see it on here, and I don't understand why we're not trying to pursue that so we can give them some relief. That seems like something that we could do right now to help them.
And we can talk to the county manager and get it on. I don't have it available in front of me, so but we can bring that up for just to get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, when we were at the meeting in the box, they said to send it to everybody, that would be a good resolution, and I think they said send it to the department, send it to the legislature, send it to
I
the
think
Senate.
Carl said send it to the custodians too.
He said
so-
send it to everybody, so I would have
did.
liked to have seen it on the agenda, to be honest.
And we can address that. That's not a problem.
And I think some of the issues, going back to Medicaid, we're seeing some of that same impact in Medicaid with the Affordable Care Act,
Right.
which is something we probably really can't control much there, but, because categorical eligibility was a state decision, but the impacts of ACA are definitely hitting us hard, especially with the increase in Medicaid application volume that we're seeing, definitely.
I had a couple of questions regarding the Affordable Care Act and the insurance requirements. This is where they go to the marketplace, and so all of these people that have not gotten an answer back, and you threw out a couple numbers which were rather large, they're currently uninsured. Is that true?
They could be uninsured. I would expect that if you're going through the marketplace, you probably are, or you're shopping for something cheaper.
Right.
So without looking through each case, I would expect that most are uninsured.
Yeah, because basically, just envision it this way. You sit down on your computer, you're going to the exchange, you put in your information. Basically, what happens at that website is it kicks it back to say, okay, before you can get subsidy to buy private insurance, we need to make sure you're not eligible for Medicaid. So it kicked it to the state for us to make sure that there was no Medicaid eligibility issues for this. Because what happens is sometimes people may have been eligible for Medicaid that didn't realize it. So based on the information they had put in the exchange, that's what it kicked back. But what happened was those applications got stuck. They got held. And now they're dropping to us over the past month and a half. They're really starting to drop down now to counties. So those folks most likely are
Well,
possibly
let
uninsured.
me step back, because I know a lot of folks who were buying their own insurance got termination letters because their plan did not meet the Affordable Care Act. I know my family is one of them. We were purchasing insurance for my husband, and we got a letter saying it did not meet. So we had insurance, but, had I chosen not to do what we did, we would have gone through the marketplace. So some people did have insurance, but they were pushed into the Affordable Care Act. So, and now there have been some step backs from that, from the federal government, that you don't have to do that, and, you've gotten waivers. Some plans have gotten waivers for that. So some of these families may have had insurance or may still have insurance. They're looking for a cheaper alternative. And when you want the subsidy, which is the only way you can get a discount is to get the subsidy, I think, you have to be evaluated for Medicaid.
So we really don't know how many of these cases are valid or not. I got the same letter you got.
Right.
Saying my plan was being terminated.
Right.
And when I consulted with some folks, they said, well, you need to go to the marketplace.
Right.
And I said, oh, no, please, not that. And because, we've
Right.
read all the stories about the difficulty
Right.
that people have. And so before I ever got desperate enough to do that, then I got a letter back from the insurance company, and now
Right. So
now
then
you can.
Some of
And-
these families may be in that spot. And I have talked to folks who they have insurance, they're looking for something less expensive, and they're hoping that the plans on the marketplace are less expensive. So some are just shopping, others really don't have insurance, but to tell you a number, I could not do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think the state or even the federal government can tell us that right now. Who has insurance, who doesn't, who did, who didn't, what kind of percentages are we looking at? Without looking at each one and doing tick marks and things like that, I don't think I can give you that information right now.
And so potentially, when we do catch up on all those applications, a big chunk of them are probably going to say, oh, we've already made other arrangements, and that's not relevant anymore.
That or they're not eligible to begin with because of the Medicaid rules. So
Right.
there may be some of both.
And the other question that I would have is, do we have any flexibility whatsoever in all of these programs that are creating? We are totally mandated, required by law to do all these things.
Well,
Is
North
that-
Carolina has options. Their Medicaid plan is, there are options the state has taken that other states don't take. So the state drives, there are some parts of Medicaid that are mandated. The percentage of, like the Affordable Care Act mandated that every state have an electronic means to get the application, which is why they used NC Fast. But there are some benefits and some parts or programs that North Carolina has that other states do not have and that are not mandated. They're options. So because the state plan is what it is, everything we're doing, we have to do. So if the state plan were to change, then we would have some flexibility. But right now, we're doing, anything we do, we're mandated to do, whether it's a state plan or a federal plan.
And are you talking about as a county, too?
Yeah, I'm talking about Cabarrus County.
We have
No,
no-
we have no, we're doing
Yeah,
everything,
we have no choice.
yeah, we're not doing anything extra.
Right, so we have to do this.
Correct.
And we have to try to meet these deadlines that they impose. And so that means we have to incur all the expense for overtime, additional staff, not to mention the long-term expense we're going to have from staff turnover because this extended, you paint a gloomy picture.
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, I believe what you're saying. It's just incredible that we're in such a position. And
Well-
yet, I see the statement in this letter that says, the performance of this system has been stellar, and there have been no performance issues. I'm assuming that none of you agree with that statement.
Absolutely not.
But it's pretty incredible that somebody at the state level would make those kind of comments, knowing the issues that all the counties are having to deal with.
To the legislators at that.
Yes.
That was a statement at a legislative oversight committee. And it has been, it's been the perfect storm, I think, unfortunately, in some ways, because a lot of the issues from the Affordable Care Act would probably not be as bad for us if we had our case management system working effectively like it should. So I think that's where we've had this, and it, unfortunately, it happened in food and nutrition first, which, like Trish said, is the easier program. The rule books, if you had an old-fashioned manual for Medicaid, it would be this thick. Food stamps is a little more of a simpler program. Medicaid, especially when you talk adult Medicaid, long-term care, if you've ever dealt with a parent or grandparent and talking about the assets to get into long-term care and what you have to do, the look-back periods, all the rules that go with that. And if we roll out an adult Medicaid in July, I don't even want to.
That's a lot more difficult than what you're doing now.
It's bad enough now. It's just, something's got to change. This is just unsustainable. It's just unsustainable.
Is this unique? What are other states experiencing this? You mentioned that you have to have an electronic method of doing certain things. Are other states experiencing the problems that we are, or do you know?
I don't know, but I believe I've seen some information about the federal marketplace not working properly in those states. I imagine that their Medicaid programs may have issues as well. I don't know. I've been honestly so focused on the issues we've had for food and nutrition that I haven't gone trolling for data on Medicaid, but I will do that to see what other states are experiencing.
I think it's safe to say NC-FAST is the common denominator for us here.
Right.
And to actually see the state now with Medicaid go back to say, okay, we're going to now go back to the old system and work in the old system, it is somewhat of an admission that this system is not working, it's broke right now. We want it to work. I mean, we've asked for this. We've asked for this system in a lot of ways for 20 years. But it's just like any major rollout of as you saw with the Affordable Care Act. I mean, you saw the same things there, just this has just been beyond the scope. I think we can't say enough about our staff. I mean, I would want to just let you know our staff is beyond dedicated. The work they have done, Chris knows this, is serving on the board. I mean, it is, my hat's off. I don't know how they do it.
We've talked about the eligibility requirements for food and nutrition, and I agree that we want to make sure that folks that should not be receiving that are not receiving it. I know that you've talked about your caseload has increased since that has been removed. If that were to be reinstated, then potentially that could decrease your caseload, but how much work do you have to do if they reinstated that requirement tomorrow? Does that mean you would have to go back through all those food and nutrition, or you would do that just as they reapplied? And so that's not a cumbersome thing to add on to that process?
No, I mean, unless they made it retroactive. I mean, the state has in the past made policy retroactive, and then you did have to do file reviews, but normally it is effective at the next recertification.
You just start catching them as they
and then
come
you would
through.
start at, as your normal work.
I just want to make sure we're not asking for a resolution that's going to make the problem worse.
Well, and I think, categorical eligibility, like we talked about in the median in the box, it has its pros, it definitely has its positive points. you can be categorical eligibility, but still have some asset test, and you could definitely have an income level that is not, it's at 200%. So it just depends on if you think, from an economy standpoint, if we're at that level, that people that are at 200% of poverty should be getting benefits. You know, that was the thinking back in 2010 when the economy was so bad. If the economy's better now, could that be more like at 130% or 150%, somewhere in that level? But again, that's a policy debate above our level. We just
Right.
administer the policies that we're given. But, you know, that's kind of the argument, I think, that Jason's been talking about, especially in terms of, has the dynamics shifted that we need to look back at more restrictive means?
Yeah, and just one more question, and then I'll stop, because we're taking a lot of time.
Sorry.
If somebody comes in and applies for food and nutrition, and you have to do an asset test, how you do that? I mean, do they have to fill out a form, and you take their word for it, or do you call the bank and see if they got a savings account? Or?
Normally, you would get a bank statement, and you would look at, the policy would dictate what time period you looked at, and then that would sort of get you there.
Right.
If it's not questionable, a lot of times you can take a client statement, and when we had, you know, when you looked at vehicles, we have access to, you know, motor vehicle records
Registration
and
records.
things like that, and you would just look at that while the client's there and say, hey, do you still have this car? And if you don't, then you need to take this form and get somebody to say you don't have it, or, you know, why is the
Right.
title still in your name, that kind of thing. So, you know, it can sometimes be cumbersome, but, you know, whatever the policy is, we work within that, so.
Right, great, thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for all the work that you and your staff are doing. I'm certainly sympathize and feel somewhat powerless to help.
I do have one question, follow-up. Whenever, for the food and nutrition or the Medicaid, whenever they're reapplying or recertifying, is that done annually, or how often?
It depends on their category. Some clients are 6 months. Most of our food and nutrition clients are 6 months. The Affordable Care Act changed the certification periods for the bulk of our Medicaid cases to 1 year. So now they're at an annual. So food stamps will be every 6 months, and Medicaid will be every year for most of our clients.
Who's responsible for making most of this mess? The federal government or the state government?
Well,
Sounds to
it
me
just
like every time
depends,
y'all
I
find out what
guess.
the rules are, they change them.
Well, the rules come from the federal government. The state has to implement. Our computer system is state-driven, so I would say everybody has a little piece in it.
It ought to be called the Unaffordable Care Act.
And NC SLO.
Yeah, definitely NC slow.
And Mr. Moores, I wanted to point out that on page 2 of the letter, it talks about what the state is trying to do to help with the administrative costs for Medicaid. And they did try to get the 72% reimbursement for Medicaid done in NC Fast. It is obviously our tax dollars at work to get the reimbursement, but that would help offset the county cost to the administrative burden that they've placed on us. So that does help a little bit with the cost.
So they've been successful in doing that, or they're trying to do that?
They were successful in getting that approved by the Centers for Medicare Medicaid, but only when you work in NC Fast. So all of our applications are taken in NC Fast, so that would get us 75% reimbursement. But all the reviews that we tried to put in are now being put in the old system. So reviews would not get 75%. The applications would. So all these federal marketplace applications and things like that, that is at 75% reimbursement.
Well, every little bit helps a lot.
I got one last question. Sorry. So the system was designed to, well, I guess to catch duplicate applications from around the state, is that correct?
No, it was to make it easier for one family to get all the benefits they were entitled to in a seamless way,
Okay.
streamlined fashion.
But does it not coordinate with the other counties around the state?
It does.
It does,
You
yes,
can see,
it does.
but our old systems did that as
Did
well.
that as well, yeah, okay.
But yeah, you're definitely right in terms of that concept of any county could go in there and pull up that information, and it would be there for them. That was definitely part of the premise.
Hey, Ben, when you came to us with the NC Fast problems, you and I chatted, and you said this categorical eligibility is one of the things that has really added to our caseload, and we have been trying to be an advocate for you. Trish, you had mentioned some policies at the state. Are there ways that we can be an advocate for you as a county commission at the state and help you with this rollout? Is that something we can help you with?
Yes. In fact, the Directors Association is working in partnership with your association and county managers. In fact, we had a conference call a couple weeks ago on a Friday afternoon, and we talked about how we really need the support of County Commissioners Association, because you guys are the ones that, understand what we're dealing with locally. So I think that partnership is there and that support is there. It's a matter of, I think, where the association got with this letter especially, it was a little bit of frustration that we were not feeling like we were partners with the state, and we were kind of getting thrown under the bus. So do we step out a little bit to say, okay, this is the reality that is on the ground in counties? Even the Directors Association have requested time to go in front of the General Assembly with the Legislative Oversight Committee to say, this is our story, and definitely wanted to do that with the support of county commissioner associations and county managers, because we work for you, not the state. And I think as we identify those things, we can definitely communicate that. I definitely, Mike probably gets sick of the emails I send him, because I'm definitely trying to keep him on the loop on everything that we have. But I think we can definitely identify those areas going forward. And as with the categorical eligibility, it might be just simply communicating with legislators or social service commission members. They actually are the body that makes rules for us here based on what the federal government requires. So we may need to reach out to them at some point, but NC Fast is the issue for us right now.
I appreciate all your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Sorry to take so much time.
It's all right. The next discussion, 4.1, is the County Assembly Day. I know, Chris, you typically go to that in May. Steve, did you go last year? Okay. Larry, I can't remember if you've got, okay. And Jason, do you know if you're planning to go May 28th? I don't know if you've had a time to think about it.
I was not planning to go at the moment.
Okay. We do have a budget workshop scheduled for that day, but I think last year we did the same thing. We moved the budget meeting because of Assembly Day. It falls on that same week. So if anybody's going to go, I can't go that day. But if you two want to go, then we would need to amend our meeting schedule. And that's what that item's about. So, which it's not a problem to amend it. So.
Do plan to go. I thought it was very beneficial last year. It gave us an opportunity to have some interaction with other counties and with our legislators. So I think it's a very worthwhile thing for us to do.
Okay. And Chris, you are planning to go again?
I don't know, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can look at the agenda, and we'll have that on for the regular meeting in 2 weeks on how to change that budget time so that that opportunity is available for you if you want to go, so that it wasn't a problem in the past. So,
yeah, while we're on the topic of changing the calendar, I cannot remember who approached me within the last week or so to express their discontent that we were having a regular meeting on Easter Monday. I think it's probably a little too late to do anything about that, but that's something we might want to take a look at in future years.
And move it to Easter Tuesday. Was that the idea? I mean, North Carolina is one of those unique states. Easter Monday is much more important in North Carolina than it is in most other states.
Yeah, and that's difficult to keep up with. Between Good Friday and Easter Monday, who shuts down different days? So maybe we can start a tradition of Easter Tuesday.
Okay. Well, we can definitely put that in for discussion for next year when we do the calendar. So, okay. 4.2. You're going to do that one? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 4.2, under North Carolina General Statute 122C 251, the county has an obligation to provide transport for involuntary commitment respondents in the unincorporated areas of the county. Typically, the Sheriff's Department handles that function in behalf of the county. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Hospital Authority, which includes CMC Northeast, receives mental health patients from time to time who need transport either between their different facilities or elsewhere. And the hospital authority is willing to contract with a third party to provide this service at no charge to the county for just those transports between their facilities. They have contracted in other counties with an entity called G4S Secured Solutions to provide that particular service. This represents only part of the county's obligation, but at least would take care of that part. And I think the sheriff would agree that that's beneficial to their department in terms of relieving them of some of that responsibility. The statute requires that the Board of Commissioners pass a resolution to support this taking of that responsibility directly from the Sheriff's Department to this private contractual arrangement, which is permitted by that statute, but there needs to be a resolution that shows the county's support of that. And you'll find a draft resolution in your agenda. I've actually redrafted part of that, so a revised draft of it will be in your packet for the regular meeting on the 24th, but it essentially is the same type of relationship that's being proposed. Sheriff Riley, of course, is here, and Chief Deputy Hunt, and I think we have some representatives of G4S who are here that may have some comments about this or are certainly available to answer some questions about it.
Commissioners, do you have questions of, who do you have questions of? Let me just rephrase that way. Do you want the sheriff to come up?
Well, mine would be a general question, and I hate to sound suspicious, but when somebody says we're here and we're going to relieve you of this responsibility and pay for it, I say why? I'm happy, but why?
Sheriff, do you want to?
Whoever.
I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer that,
there
but I
you
think
can-
these folks.
And G4, you guys,
are-
I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come up too. Brad, if you want to comment from your perspective.
The reason the hospital is willing to do this at no cost to you, but as to support the cost themselves is that the basic problem with behavioral health patients is when they arrive in the hospital environment, they are initially in the ER/ED departments, waiting for diagnosis to be moved on to a treating facility. As these patients arrive in the EDs and the ERs, if there is not a timely manner to move them onto the treating facility, the patients start to back up and stack up in the ER and the ED departments, which is the absolute worst place in the world to have behavioral health patients waiting for transport. The sheriff is trying, obviously, to fulfill their obligations on involuntarily committed patients as quickly as possible, but with all their other duties, they cannot necessarily do it in a 15, 20, or 30-minute time frame where my company, G4S, can. We are actually providing a hub system with officers, with vehicles that are at the disposal of the CHS system. And CHS notifies us that there is a patient who has been diagnosed through the ER. The ED is, just for an example, is at CMC Randolph and is ready to be moved to their new Davidson facility, or has been diagnosed in your facility and is ready to be moved to the new Davidson facility where they can be treated. We can be there in 15 or 20 minutes, where the sheriff has many, many other obligations and cannot move the patient out as quickly as we can. So by doing it in a timely manner for the hospitals, we're improving the flow through their ED and ER departments and leaving that staff to concentrate on what they need to be concentrating on. Our staff has been fully vetted by law enforcement and by the hospitals that Our staffs have been completely trained in behavioral health and handling behavioral health. All of our officers are CIT certified, Crisis Intervention Team certified, which is a 40-hour course designed specifically to work with behavioral health patients. In the event that it is an involuntarily committed patient that is violent, is exhibiting violent tendencies, is talking suicidal thoughts and things such as that, the sheriff will continue to transport those type patients. It is a decision that will be made by the sheriff's department and the clinicians at the hospital whether or not they feel comfortable letting the G4S staff transport. If they don't, it will continue to be done in the way it's been done before.
That was an excellent answer to my question, and it makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff Riley, do you want to add any comments? Or?
I would just add that, I mean, it is helpful to us. It's a small number, being that they'll only fill the gap of transporting those from one of their facilities to another of their facilities. We don't have very many of those. Out of the 700 to 900 transports that we do a year, they're a very, 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 very small amount of those. However, with the Harrisburg Center coming on, there may be some more that would respond to there and then need to be transported from that facility. Not real sure how that would work, but we would talk with them. But I mean, if they transport one a year, it's more, it's helpful to us. So I do see a number of times that it will be helpful.
Any other questions?
Rich, is there any downside to the county for this? It seems like it's a tremendous service for us, and we appreciate it both from the hospital perspective and from your company. But you drafted the contract. Is there any downside for the county?
Well, the contract between G4S and CMHA is something that's been drafted elsewhere, but it does contain indemnifications for the county and the sheriff's department that certainly would protect us in that circumstance. And there's also some insurance requirements that are in that contract. I've recommended that we have at least some sort of a memorandum of understanding between the county and CMHA, just so there's something in writing to evidence what the relationship is, that they've, in fact, between them and G4S, have undertaken that obligation for us.
When I looked through the contract, it looked like the minimum insurance requirement was $2 million. Do you feel comfortable that that's a sufficient amount?
I think so, for what we're dealing with here. I think so.
So can we adopt this tonight?
I think we're okay to leave it in for 2 weeks.
Okay.
I don't think it's something that we have to change the rules for. It's not my understanding.
Yes, Commissioner Burge, there'll be a revised resolution that I'd like for you to see before it's voted on. And it's been drafted, but it'll be available for the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the Selco Tower lease in Mount Pleasant. Jonathan, you're going to talk about that, please?
This is another proposed lease with a private cellular provider or mobile services provider, Verizon, but in this case under Selco Tower, for space on our tower, on the communications tower we have in Mount Pleasant. The last time I came before you with this, we were actually doing some repairs, and I was asking for your authorization for some repairs. The foundation repairs have been completed. We're going through the last checklist with that. We do have a private provider who, because we require them, if they put additional equipment or change equipment, to certify that our tower can handle that load and make any structural adjustments, we'll need to make some adjustments coming up. After that, there will be availability for this other private provider to be on that tower. So they proposed a lease that would be 2 5-year terms. The initial term would be an annual rental of $24,000. There's a 10% escalator on that for a second 5-year term if that goes through. We've also have a building available. They all need a utility or equipment building. We have a vacant building on that site available. They would make a one-time payment of $9,600 for the first 5-year period and then pay that again if they renew for a second 5-year. One of the providers that has been on the tower has been decommissioned, and we believe their equipment will be coming off. They have not notified us, so we will lose some rent with that. In this case, we do have a private group that works with us, PRS. They've looked at the rental agreement and rental amount, and feel that this is a fair payment for the space compared to what other towers receive for this type of equipment. And then the final thing I'll say is there is some benefit to this. I've talked to some staff at Mount Pleasant. We have an area with Verizon coverage in particular that is difficult in that particular area, and I've looked at their propagation maps. This will really help that area in terms of people who are Verizon subscribers with getting service. We are in the process, Mr. Cook has been communicating with their attorney because of the format of the lease. We're in the process of him negotiating and the final version of that lease, and I guess as soon as we have a new draft, that will be added to your agenda packet.
That's correct. The lease they proposed was really more of one that you would typically see in a private business setting as opposed to one between a local government and a cell provider of the sort. They had some things in there that we just can't agree to because of the nature of county government. So they've agreed to make those revisions. So we should have the lease in final form before the 21st. And under the statutes for this type of a lease, what's required is that there be a notice that's published in our normal fashion for a period of 10 days, which Ms. Smith will do, and then there'll be a resolution with reference to the lease that will be for your consideration on the 21st.
And then the final part of that is funds from rental income or lease income for this tower have been going into a separate fund that supports the maintenance of that tower. That's how we were able to make those repairs, as well as for additional emergency communications equipment, since this is a tower that benefits the sheriff's office and our emergency providers. The funds from this go into that account and then are used for that purpose.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. The next item is Pam Dubois, revised proposed calendar 2014 GO bonds.
Based on the action that the board took on March the 17th, in order for Kannapolis City Schools to have the time frame to make a decision whether they wanted to pull themselves from the bond referendum, they have until May 31st. We need to alter the bond schedule to adopt the following schedule, where our first action will no longer take place on May 19th, but will take place on July 21st. This new bond schedule would also require that on August the 4th, at our board work session, that we would have to hold a public hearing, if I do remember that correctly. And, that would call for a bond. The board would hold a public hearing at the regular workshop meeting so that they would adopt the bond order, so that the board would be required to suspend their rules to take an action on that evening. But we would still make the deadline to meet all the criteria for the Board of Elections to be able to put the bond referendum on the ballot.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions on this item?
My only question on this is, we had been dealing with that schedule for, I believe, at least since October, I think we had it, and this seems like a substantially different schedule, so I was just curious as to where we were able to receive 3 months of flexibility to do this.
I have no idea. I just know what the item is before us. I think the motion that was passed to give them until May 31st is what changed it. So that's all I can tell you.
I mean, we had several meetings right up before that, I mean, emergency meetings we had before our Board of Commissioners meeting to get that set, and now it looks like we have several months of flexibility, so I wonder where that flexibility, from where it came.
I don't know. But this would be the item before us to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what emergency meetings we've had.
I think we had to have an emergency meeting to discuss the bond amounts on the Wednesday and Thursday night before our Monday meeting, didn't we? So that we could have all the school boards come in. And I think the meeting that Dr. Shepard was unable to attend because he was up at the state DPI. So it was a very short notice meeting, I remember.
Oh, the meeting because there was a disagreement in the amount that the board set versus what the schools requested?
No, that was that meeting was before we had made our motion. Remember, we had a meeting Wednesday and Thursday, I believe. Maybe it was just Thursday, and it was Wednesday. That was when, there's Todd.
Yeah, we
Todd
had
came
extra
and we talked
discussion
about
for us
it.
Okay.
to work
Yeah.
through it. I think we just added some extra meetings to try to get through it. Other than that, I couldn't tell you.
Well,
But
the meeting
this
schedule,
motion
the meeting
changed.
schedule that's proposed before you is to accommodate that May 31st deadline, but it butts up one day to the Board of Elections deadline. So this took away all the flexibility that they had for the cushion from the last agenda schedule that we had. This one, we had to go back and have bond counsel see if they could rearrange the dates in order to make the May 31st deadline and to meet the Board of Elections requirements for the ballot. And that was taken into consideration when the schedule was put together. It just crunches it right up to her last day to have her information is August the 5th, which is the following day after that resolution is done.
And we typically would not have a public hearing at the work session. So I think this staff was trying to accommodate the motion that was passed. Okay. Any other questions concerning the schedule? I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Okay. Jonathan, you're going to talk about the aging strategic plan, and you have Mackenzie here to help.
I was going to say, I'm going to introduce Mackenzie Mullinax again to speak to you about the aging strategic plan. Again, that plan was distributed to you at your regular meeting last month, so if you have any comments, we're certainly looking for comments and feedback. But Mackenzie has some, I think, some number of points she wants to touch on, as well as, I believe, the video. I'd like to show them.
All right, so we have a slideshow for you today. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of what you received at your meeting in a PowerPoint form. So the Aging Strategic Plan, we're working to understand how to best meet the needs of the older adult population in Cabarrus County. So the process was a task force comprised of county employees. They identified 6 priority areas of focus. The residents provided input through an unscientific informational survey for services and programs needed as you grow older. Using research and feedback from the survey, 2 primary goals of focus were determined. Subcommittees were formed and set goals to help meet the current and future needs of older adults in Cabarrus County. With everything combined, the task force developed a 5-year strategic plan that aims to clarify how Cabarrus County government can serve the varying abilities and stages of the aging population and identify action steps that the board can consider for implementation over the next 5 years. So the right time to move forward, each day 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. By year 2030, the percentage of adults aged 65 and older is statistically equal to the percentage of school-age children ages 5 to 17 in Cabarrus County. More than 37 million people, 60% of baby boomers, will manage more than one chronic condition within 15 years, a 15% increase from today. Less than 20% of older adults engaged in the recommended 150 minutes a week of physical activity, and 1/3 of senior households have no money left over at the end of each month or are in debt after meeting essential expenses. So the goals of the plan. The Aging Strategic Plan Task Force determined 2 primary goals of focus that Cabarrus County can most effectively serve the aging community. 1, develop partnerships to identify, evaluate, and collaborate on programs and services, and 2, to raise awareness of the programs and services offered in Cabarrus County. County management and staff will not be able to provide services and programs for this growing population without external support. The plan incorporates collaboration with outside agencies and partners who serve the interests of older adults age 65 or older. So now we're going to look at the 6 priority areas of focus, and I'm going to give you some highlights on each area of focus. So education and information. Their focus is to increase awareness on topics, increasing attendance in the audience, diversity, and getting participants information in a timely manner. The subcommittee will create a brand for the Aging Strategic Plan. They'll create communication guidelines and create guidelines for design of educational opportunities. The Health and Wellness Subcommittee looked at the increased number of seniors with chronic diseases, lack of knowledge about managing chronic disease, decreased availability of caregivers, and increased cost of the health care. The subcommittee identified these strategies. They want to promote healthy living in all of these areas and develop an active community, Cabarrus County Walks. The Housing and Home Improvement Subcommittee focused on the gap of housing opportunities like congregate housing for older adults and the need for more programs and services to adapt housing so that older adults have the ability to remain in their own home as they grow older. They will work towards this through marketing and promoting existing housing programs that aid the older adult population and promote the construction of private sector housing to serve the older population. The Income and Employment Subcommittee focused on raising awareness, initiating conversations, and providing easy, accessible information on the availability of programs and services, partnering with community agencies and evaluating their services and programs to reduce the duplication and offer the best programs and services at each agency. Through the strategies, we will be able to identify and promote awareness of available strategies and resources that address relevant information in regards to insurance, financial arrangements, legal issues for older adults and their families, identify and promote awareness of programs that provide short-term and long-term public financial assistance, and to promote awareness and participation through workforce development to refocus, retrain, and reemploy older adults. So the Recreation and Entertainment Subcommittee recommends identifying resources, developing partnerships, and expanding the programs to increase social interactions and to expand community and seek additional funding resources. Through these strategies, we hope to rid the challenges of willingness to spend money on leisure pursuits, culture and language diversity, and the thought of seniors believing they are not old or believe the senior center facilities and programs are for older adults who are elderly. Transportation accessibility looked at the challenges that they face are stagnant funding resources, available resources, and rapid increase in the demand of service and stereotype on the view of transportation services. A way that we can prevent these challenges are to identify additional resources and expand existing services to meet the current demand and expand the scope of services to address the needs and enhance the marketing. Accomplishing these tactics at a professional level will require support from the Board of Commissioners, operational support, and additional guidance from county leadership, continued partnership, and resources. So now we're going to look at a video that will illustrate the need for these services in Cabarrus County Aging Strategic Plan.
By 2030, the percentage of adults ages 65 and older will be statistically 65 and older will be statistically equal to the percentage of school-age children ages 5 to 17, each group accounting for 17% of the population in Cabarrus County. Senior initiatives focused on accessibility, affordable housing, and responsive community services are essential in keeping our senior population active, engaged, contributing to their communities and to the economy. Here are some of the stories of seniors whose needs are currently being met by Cabarrus County government's programs and services.
I'd worked all my life, and I always had health coverage through my employer. Well, my wife got sick, and I had to retire to take care of her at home. I not only lost my salary, but I lost my health coverage. So I was really in the dark. I didn't know where to find it. So I went to the drugstore, and I asked my druggist, and he wrote SHIP on a piece of paper and a phone number. I went down and talked to Amanda at SHIP, and she showed me all the options on the computer. She pulled up what they had and what I could get, what it would cost, and she had a policy that would give us all the insurance we needed, no deductible, nothing come out of our checking account or our Social Security check. And this come to a savings. We figured it up about $5,000 a year. $5,000 a year can mean the difference between living your normal lifestyle or having to cut back on the basics. But on months when we had property taxes or car insurance or things like that, we couldn't break even on it. I thought I had a good insurance policy, and now I got a great insurance policy because these people know what they're doing. I could have never done it without them. I mean, I'd advise anybody, whether you've got insurance or you're looking to get insurance, not to do it alone because it is complicated. I found that out. These people have the answers, they know what they're doing, and they can help you find the best policy that you can afford. It's like I said, we can enjoy the same lifestyle we had when I was working. we feel like we're prepared for emergencies, like something for the house, or I have to buy something for the car. We don't have to worry about doing without food or medicine. You would not believe the price of those medicines. There's no way we could do it without this program, and I would have never found the program without SHIP.
Truthfully, when I came down from the north, I was ready to move back. It was like, what do I do now? And then I found the senior center. I've made some really nice friends. So my life is really quite full. I love playing pool. I play with some other women and all my friends now, people I never knew before. They're my pool partners. The biggest thing is all the friends I have made. You know, when my family wants to come and visit, they have to come at a certain time because I have plans at the senior center. So that I really love it. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't find it.
Tell me about the senior games. I know you participate in that.
Oh, yes. Oh, I signed up for everything. But hopefully I get a medal in pool. And if I get a medal, we go to Raleigh and play up there. But I'm into bocce and shuffleboard and corn toss and baseball throw, which last year I got ready to throw and I dropped the ball behind me. But they didn't give me a medal for that. But that too, I mean, whether you know how to play anything or not, it's just the playing. Some people just sit around at home, I can't play games, I can't play pool, I can't dance. But just come and just talk to people. I mean, get on the computer over here rather than at home. There's always someone else in the computer room and you could talk. It's just meeting all the people and not being alone. To me, that's the best thing here.
Well, the people were wonderful to work with. I called and they came out and they insulated overhead, insulated underneath the house, and went all the places that air could come in, they sealed. They put a cover over my stairs that went up into the attic and sealed that up so there wouldn't no air come down through there. After they did the weatherization on my house, I can turn the air off at night and it doesn't get down below about 65, 66 degrees even on the coldest nights in the house. It meant a whole lot to me as far as my family, as far as it cut some of our everyday bills that we had, heating, air, electrical, things like that. It cut it practically, especially the heating, in half. So that give us a lot more to use as far as for food and other things we need.
I'm the oldest person to have completed a marathon on each of the 7 continents. It's in the 2007 book, next to John Glenn, who is the oldest person to have gone into space. When I was 64 years old, I listened to what the Surgeon General was saying about smoking. He was telling us that it would give us lung cancer, it would give us emphysema. I listened. And I went to a stop smoking clinic and they told me, quit smoking, get out and move it. So the first morning, I had my breakfast, my coffee, no cigarette. I just put on whatever outdoor shoes I had and I went running down the street having my little nicotine fit. I thought, I kind of like this. My body likes this feeling of motion. Tomorrow I'm going to go 4 houses. At the senior center, I get on the treadmill, use their trail at the back because I do a mountain climb once a year, so that's a really good place to train. I like to win and I'm competitive. I'm extremely competitive. And I know full well that if I don't train, I can't do it. I stay active all year long. We have programs going all year long down here. The big comes in the spring when we have our senior games. And that's such a wide variety that anyone over 50 will surely find some things to do that will make them happy. The people are so important. I see less of my old friends now because we're aging out. Some are gone and some have just quit running. But it's a great experience. I always look forward to going to a race and seeing the people that I know and meeting new people, and the competition is just wonderful. You know, I was so lucky at 64 to find something late in life totally different from anything I could have ever imagined that was such a wonderful lifestyle. It has been just great.
When I moved here from Pittsburgh, I didn't know anyone. Heard about the program. Went the first day I was there. They welcomed me like they had known me for all my life. When I came here, I was pretty, I guess, fat. And because of the program, with the exercise and the nutritional lunch that I get, instead of eating sandwiches every day like I used to, I lost over 100 pounds. And I'm still losing weight. I mean, it's like a new me. I mean, it's half of what I was before. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know what I'd do without the program. You know, I don't know what I would do without it. I'd be in the house 24 hours a day, and I'd just be sitting there. And with this program, I can get out, and I can meet people, I can do different things, and it makes me feel younger. I don't drive. I can't drive because my eyes are very bad. And they come and they pick you up at your house. They take you to your doctor's appointment. They'll take you to the Lunch Plus programs, and the drivers will help you on and off of the vans. I mean, and I don't know what I would do without it, because I have a lot of doctor's appointments to go to, and my son and my daughter-in-law, they work. They can't take me to my appointments. If I didn't have the transportation, I would be in the house 24 hours a day. I'd be sitting there, and I don't want to do that. I want to get out, and I want to be and do things. I want to be on my own. I want to be able to do things on my own, and because of the transportation, I can. They have anything to keep you busy and to keep your mind working, which, as a senior citizen, you have to do. Because if you keep your mind going, you're going to feel good, and you're going to be healthy. And that's what you have to do. When you're senior citizens, you have to keep yourself moving, and you have to keep yourself healthy. They help me a great deal, and I have an awful lot of fun. The people that are there are absolutely fantastic. They have helped me get back my life.
So as you can see, some of the programs and services that we offer in Cabarrus County do touch people's lives, and they are services that we need. So this 5-year plan will address the needs of the growing aging population in Cabarrus County. If we plan to act now, the focus is on prevention and awareness of our programs. And over the first 5 years, by year 2020, we hope to position Cabarrus County as having a more informed public, improve access to services and housing, a healthier population, a safer communities, and better prevention of abuse and exploitation of older adults. Through the Aging Strategic Plan, the needs of our aging community are closely aligned to the county's mission and visionary leadership and good stewardship to provide services and continue to enhance the quality of life. So there's kind of like an overview of our Aging Strategic Plan that you received.
Commissioners? Any comments or questions that you have at this time?
Are we adopting this plan as part of our meeting? our regular board meeting, or are we just receiving this plan? What is the purpose of this presentation?
I think that's really up to the board. If you wish to adopt it or just endorse it, then that's certainly something you can do. What we've really done here is look not just at the programs we already have in place, so this wouldn't necessarily institute new programs and actions. What it is providing education and awareness on those programs that you've already helped put in place with the facilities and services we offer, as well as for staff. It's helped us strengthen partnerships and given us more of a roadmap to continue to strengthen those partnerships. Because when I introduced this to you, I had said that we had some private providers, and in the private marketplace is going to have to take care of a number of these items. With this changing population, it's going to alter the housing mix that's needed in Cabarrus County, and that's not something that a public agency is going to do. That's going to be a private developer. So those types of things. It isn't going to necessarily take an action by you. It's going to be a reaction of the marketplace. Other parts of this certainly are programs and facilities, again, that we have in place and we would like to continue to offer to the citizens. So it may be something that you wish to endorse or adopt, but I think that's really up to the board, how you'd like to handle that.
Well, my big concern is when I read through the program, it had, I believe, 6 new subcommittees, and we sat and listened to Mr. Rose talk about all the benefits of how government continues to grow, and people were tremendously unsatisfied with those things. And so I'm concerned about setting up 6 new subcommittees. The thing that really concerned me about this was question number 9 on page 55. When we asked this was a non-scientific survey, it was in places where people use Cabarrus County services, and question number 9 is, would you like to learn more about programs and services currently offered by Cabarrus County government? And almost 50% of the people said, no, I am not interested in programs and services currently offered by Cabarrus County. So I am a little bit hesitant to set up all these new subcommittees and things like that when almost 50% of our respondents said they weren't interested in hearing about these things. And I wonder if instead of setting up all these things, we could better use the resources that would go into all these subcommittees to actually better serve our seniors in some ways.
If you look under page 12, under the age, and it looks at the major category that people respond to the survey was age 55 to 64. Mentioned too, a lot of things of feedback that we've received back from the public is a lot of people don't feel they're old enough to participate in programs they're considered a senior or older adults, age 65 or older. So I think making a big push to say, here's what we have to offer you and here's the benefits of it may increase people participating.
Right. Question number 9 wasn't, would you like to learn more about senior programs and services? It was just, would you like to learn more about programs and services currently offered by Cabarrus County? It was a very general question, and almost 50% of the people said, no, I'm not interested in programs and services currently offered. So,
well, as Mackenzie said, we did make a push for people who were both providers and would be aging into the populations that we serve. But as far as the 6 new subcommittees, these are existing staff and existing nonprofit agencies. So these are not, we wouldn't be adding staff to do this. I mean, I think as time changes, you may see that in the 2020, 2030 range. You're going to see a difference in a shift in where our employment has to be or where we have to provide those services. But at this point, it's really those subcommittees are existing, people who are in these programs, people who are providing these programs, and they're put together more to make sure we're working together properly and doing that efficiently and meeting those demands. So it would not require additional resources from the county government. It would be more of a focus, education, and awareness of the resources we have.
Couple questions, but first of all, I totally understand what you're saying about some people not realizing the eligibility or the age range. You know, I personally got rather insulted at a restaurant recently when they asked me if I got the senior coffee, and I didn't think I should be eligible, and they said that I obviously was. So I can understand if I were not involved in county government, I would very likely say, well, no, I'm not interested in senior programs because I don't need them. But can you address our capacity? I know that this population is obviously growing, as you have pointed out in your presentation. A lot of folks and some of the ones that we heard from participate in the Lunch Plus program, which I've mentioned a couple of other times because I've had an opportunity to talk with some folks that both work in that program as well as some of the service recipients. And then, of course, the senior center and the activities. So do we have capacity to handle more people in those programs, or as this population grows, or are we going to not be able to handle the folks that might come?
And that's a possibility. I know some programs, they have a cutoff limit of how many people can even participate in programs, I know. But I think, looking at population, like in your thing, it's like states that in 2010, the census, the total population in Cabarrus counties for adults age 65 and older is 20,085, which is 11%. And then you move to 2030, which is just in a few years, be here before we know it, the total population of adults age 65 or older will be 40,653, which will be 17%. And like mentioned before, that's going to be the exact same pretty much percent as school-age children, 5 to 17. So we may or we may not. And I think starting now to look for the future, being prepared, we might be able to see that in the future, know that, okay, look, we got all these people coming that are going to be this age that we may not be able to provide service for, so what are we going to do?
Right.
So we currently operate, of course, 2 senior centers, the one in Mount Pleasant and the one here in Concord, but our population growth, including aging population, or a population is growing older, our population is centered. Harrisburg is a very large growth area, but also has an existing population that is aging. And then certainly the western part of Concord and southern part of Kannapolis are a large population area. And just as we look at where we provide library services, where we provide EMS services, where we have any kind of satellite office, I think there will be a time where we will look at the need for a library, senior center, and possibly some combination of that to meet demand that would be in the western part of the county. And one of the things we discussed, I can just speak for the housing committee, is that may be a way that there could be impetus for the private market then to supply some of that housing that's necessary if those services, the senior center type services and the things that went along with that and library services were somewhere nearby and did not have to be provided in the private facility.
Right.
But yes, I think you will see some, as the population grows, you will see the capacity of our existing centers taken up. The last renovation we did to the senior center here in Concord has taken up, that is the most we really can expand that on that site. So if the demand starts outpacing what we can provide there, then there will be some push to provide another senior center for those.
Right. And I assume that the transportation issue of it, and I see Bob is here with us, most of these folks that take advantage of our transportation service are because they don't have another option. I mean, it's not because they just choose not to drive, like the lady said, she had vision issues and those kind of things. And the other question I have is, do we have any kind of statistics or information as to the investment that we might make in promoting active lifestyle and good health for these seniors? Does that keep them away from Ben's doorstep applying for additional services, health-related services? Do we have any statistics on that?
I don't know if I have any. Ben, do you have any statistics on that?
I think there is, I don't have statistics, but I think there's definitely evidence that preventive, approaches can reduce needs, long-term needs. I think a good example of that perhaps is like our programs that we have within Kathy Mauer's division that look at trying to get things to seniors that are disabled and are possibly adult care homebound and or nursing homebound, but we do things to help keep them in their homes a little longer, and we prevent that more expensive placement. So I don't think there's any doubt that preventative care can help keep people from coming through our doors. Now, when it comes to things like Medicaid and so forth that we were talking about earlier, that's just going to be based on their personal income. Right. I think it's more health, quality of life, safety type prevention that this plan would probably be looking at.
Right.
And I would say too, talking a little earlier to one of the questions, is that we do, a lot of the funding that we get for these services is capped and limited. Most of it is a block grant type of programming, so there is a capacity issue, I think, that we definitely have going forward, because these funds have never gone up. The federal government has never funded the Older Americans Act. That is an unfunded act that has a lot of mandates in it. You talk about unfunded mandates, there's another one for you from the federal government. So our funding is more limited there, so I think that's where this plan was kind of looking at that going forward too. How far do we want to go with our capacity to provide the services, both preventive and you know, if we have to, reactive type services, we can.
And I guess what I get from what you're saying is that the funding that we receive is capped, and of course we can't predict how that will be in the future, but unless we get additional funding, then we're going to have to start denying the seniors of tomorrow will not get the benefits that the ones today get, unless we figure out a way to increase that capacity.
Right. I think that was definitely a part of the challenge that this group took on, because we, you know, if you go based on history, I would not anticipate future growth in these services or programs, but the population and the volume will grow. So it comes down to, I think, a quality of life, you know, community type of issue. How far would we want to go as a county to continue to provide these services, or if we have to expand them, which of course are tough decisions, but it's, I think there's definitely no trend for, you know, increasing funding for these programs, even as the population will grow over the next 20 years.
Right, great. Thank you. Those answers are helpful. Sure.
Well, I was going to pick on Commissioner Burridge because he always says he's not old enough to go to the senior center. So, and honestly, Jason, I think I responded to the survey, and I probably am in that percentage that said I didn't need more information because I already have some. I think I do remember responding to it, and it wasn't because I didn't need it. It's just I felt like I was in a position to get information. So,
well, next year this 46% might be changed their mind too, and the senior center also now operates on a small budget. They don't spend a lot of money down there for the programs they do, and they're well needed, well deserved, and it won't be many years till this county will need another senior center built somewhere in this county, because that down there is going to be full in the next 5 years. If it's not, it's pretty full now in what goes on down there. So there will be another one needed, and you might well plan on starting to figure out how to pay for it.
it sounds like Commissioner Burridge has found use for the senior center then.
I don't.
You know, I just like to pick on you.
That's all right. I'll be old enough to go down there one day.
Well, and that was more my point. Before we go start 6 new subcommittees and things like that, I mean, when we really look at their answers, the people that responded, I mean, I didn't make these numbers up. These are the people that responded, said, no, I'm not interested in programs and services currently offered by Cabarrus County. So before we go do a gigantic expansion, we should make sure that the programs that we have now are solidly funded, that we have a plan to continue to provide the services at the capacities we need to provide them at, before we go do things that 46.3% of the people may not be interested in doing.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Thank you both very much. Next item, Bobby Smith is here. 2014 Emergency Operations Plan.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us the time to come for you. For those of you that don't know, this is Chris Gagner with Leidos Incorporated. They are emergency management, planning, response, military consulting group. We've worked with them in the past on several of our planning efforts. And Chris is also a resident of Cabarrus County, so he has a vested interest in our plans here. What we have before you tonight is, over the last 15 months, we have been updating our countywide emergency operations plan. As you're aware, this plan is required by state and federal standards that each county have a plan in place, and it's an overarching plan to basically govern how we direct and control and respond on large-scale or countywide emergencies. The plan is designed to have a basic plan and then functional annexes, as you have seen as we presented. And over the last 15 months, we've met with all of our departments, our non-governmental organization, our other community partners, reviewing our current plan. We met with individuals, we met in functional groups, and then finally we actually had a tabletop exercise with all our participants to go through the final plan and make some adjustments. And what you have before you is the recommended final plan for adoption that we would appreciate you adopting. We're here to address any questions that you may have. One point is you'll notice that there is not an Annex H. That is a placeholder right now. That was search and rescue. As you know, our rescue is no longer in service, so we took those duties and we put those out in other annexes in our department, EMS and fire, but we didn't want to redesignate every annex, so we just kind of left it as a placeholder, but those duties are still there in the plan. And then you also have another annex that was presented to you. So again, we'll address any questions, and we ask that you consider adoption of our 2014 Emergency Operations Plan.
Commissioners, any comments or questions on this plan? Since they're here.
Just one comment. Obviously you've put a lot of effort into this. If a number of years ago, I probably would have looked at it and said, is all this really necessary? But I had the opportunity to be chairman of the local Red Cross board several years ago and happened to be in that position when Hurricane Katrina struck. And so I had an opportunity to be involved in some of those discussions about the response, and it became very apparent to me how important this really is. And I appreciate the fact that our county government interfaces with these other volunteer organizations like the Red Cross, and there are a number of others, and the relationship appears to me to have always been mutually beneficial to both. So thank you for establishing those relationships. I think it's to the benefit of all of our citizens.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
The next two items, Susan Farrington is here. First item is a deed transfer for Forest Park Elementary School to Kannapolis City Schools.
Right. And we have the deed attached to your agenda packet, and the Kannapolis City Schools called us and wanted the deed back for the Forest Park Elementary School. We no longer need that deed. In the past, when we obtain title to school properties, we are obtaining that for either collateral for a COPS issue or for construction sales tax that we're able to get back once a year. So at this time, we are completely finished with the construction of Forest Park and their wing addition back in 2006. So it was time to turn the deed back over to Kannapolis City Schools.
Commissioners, any questions on this item?
Just had one general question for you. The school was built in 1998, and then we did the wing addition. So do they deed it back to us to do the wing addition, and then we did it back to them, the entire property, or I was just curious about that?
I could check with the Land Records Department, but I believe we've kept the title the entire time. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. The next item concerns some final interest on the QSCB project, and we do need to, after you explain it, we do need a motion to suspend the rules so that we can take action on it tonight. Thank you.
And we have our final interest for the QSCABs. Each month we've been earning a little bit more interest, but I've spoken with the trustee, and they assure me this time this is the final amount of interest. We received a check on April 1st for $3.19. After consulting our bond attorney, it was determined that this money had to be spent on a QSCAB eligible project and not used for debt service. So I contacted the Cabarrus County Schools because they did have some projects that were still open that they've actually been paying the balance of themselves. And so it was determined that we needed to spend the money on the Central Cabarrus High School office renovations. They have presented an invoice to me where that shows that they've paid their portion of more than $3.19. So just as for legalities, to make sure we're following all the provisions, the statutory provisions for QSCAB funding, we are requesting this $3.19 go for the Central Cabarrus High School office renovations project.
Any questions on this particular item, Commissioners?
Madam Chairman, I suspect this is the most expensive $3.19 the county has ever received. Based on that, I will make a motion to suspend the rules so we can deal with this.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, at this time, we need a motion to adopt the revised qualified school construction bond, project ordinance, and related budget amendment.
So moved.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, item 4.9, Susie Morris is here to talk about proposed text amendments to the zoning ordinance.
Good evening. What you have in front of you this evening is two proposed text amendments. One is to Chapter 6 of the zoning ordinance, and the other is to Chapter 7. The purpose of the changes in Chapter 6 are to make some corrections and also some updates that are needed to language. There are some outdated references to the building code, as well as to some documents. We also need to clarify how the modified setbacks are determined. The way that it is currently written, the amount for the distance needs to be expanded a little bit. What we were finding is that within the 100 feet, sometimes there were no houses, so we've expanded that to 500 feet. And then also how setbacks are determined on corner lots. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those changes in Chapter 6. And then Chapter 7 is simply to clean up, there are still references in Chapter 7 to the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, which we are no longer enforcing. The Planning and Zoning Commission did vote unanimously in November on Chapter 6, and then in March on Chapter 7 to forward them to the commissioners for final consideration. And those proposed changes were also reviewed by the county attorney and the text amendment committee. And you all will need to hold a public hearing for these amendments and then vote on the proposed changes.
Okay, commissioners, any questions at this time? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, can we take a 10-minute break at this point and start back up at 6:30? Okay? That'll give us a good 10 minutes, okay? Thank you.